regarding the recent CBSE result, where more than 60,000 students have above 90%, and more than 6,000 students have above 95%. So, have we become knowledge loaders?
Yes, of course. You see, you have a particular syllabus which consists of information and the rules and methods to process that information. And then you have an examination which is testing you much more on your memory and the system that processes a particular kind of information than on anything else. So you have made the system, you can decide to give them 90% or 99%, or if you so want, you can modify the question papers to give them only 50%. So that's it. It does not prove or disprove anything.
I have a question. Mind is everything.
Mind is everything.
Body obeys the mind. Probably at the time of birth, body comes first, and little later, very later, the soul comes in. I don't know when the mind comes in. But my point is, as you very rightly saying, we are born pure, no corruption. But as we go on, 1 year, 2 years, we get influenced. Mind is getting influenced. How to control the mind? Mind is the main. Mind is everything. We using local language, mind is
Wonderful.
everything.
Well said. Very well said.
Mind is everything. Who will control the mind?
Who will control the mind? You see, as teachers, probably the question translates to, are we responsible for feeding a lot into the child's, the student's mind? Obviously, the child's mind is like a sponge. It is sucking in inputs from all directions. And the child is dependent. The child has to be taught to do certain things. The child has to be told by way of information which lane to take, which side of the road to walk. All this has to be done. But Vedanta says that a stage comes when the responsibility of the guardian or the teacher is to take away the external support. There is a time when external support has to be provided, when knowledge and data have to be given to the child. It is imperative for his physical survival. But an age comes when everything that was external must start being withdrawn. The sages put that age at 11 years. Around 11 years of age, the external crutches must start to be withdrawn. And when you withdraw the external, then the space is created in which the internal can blossom. If external support persists even after the student enters teenage, then his own internal faculty, which you can call as related to the heart, will never really open up. So as teachers, our responsibility then is to reveal to the student how deeply conditioned and dependent he is. And if he is conditioned and dependent, then the revelation of the dependency is the first step in the removal of the dependency. Vedanta calls it by the name of neti neti. You look at something, and in looking at something, you come upon the falseness of the thing. You learn that it is false. It is not proper. This realization itself drops that thing. So a student comes to us. It is then incumbent upon us to reveal to him the falsenesses that fill up his life. Obviously not make him more dependent upon us or knowledge or anything else. Not strike in him more fears, but to show to him that he is already so afraid and he is needlessly afraid. He need not be afraid.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I thought I heard you saying you're basically making an argument that a lot of the ills of today's world are a product of the education system. So would you say that this argument is necessarily predicated on the belief that nurture is more important than nature? Would you agree to that? Because if I believe that, if I accept that whether nurture is more important than nature, that itself is an unsettled question. But if I were to agree that, if I were to accept the view that nature is more important than nurture, then I could say that, I could point out the fact that even in today's world, with today's education system, there are certain people who are coming out who are good. Okay, so I could say that the negative outcomes that you're seeing are not a product of the education system, are just a product of the fact that more and more bad people are being born. Maybe people, I personally believe, I subscribe to the view that nature is more important than nurture. I believe that people are born bad. And so, based on whatever you experience, you could have still been a good person, but it's because you chose to be a bad person. So would you agree that your argument is necessarily predicated on the view that nurture is more important than nature?
Vedanta takes nurture and nature as just two layers of conditioning. It clubs them into one. It does not even give them so much importance so as to distinguish between them. What you call as nature is not Swabhav, it is just Prakriti. Prakriti that Vedanta denotes by the name of Vritti. A child is born with tendencies. Vritti, Prakriti. You can call it biological conditioning. So when a child is born, he is already born with a body, with a brain, with a biology, which is his fundamental biological conditioning. Then another layer of conditioning called social conditioning sits and feeds upon the layer of vritti. What comes out of this layer is vichar.
But what about the soul? We all believe that
Yes,
there is a soul.
wonderful.
So when I say that people are born bad, I mean that there is a bad soul in that person.
No. Soul is neither good nor bad. And neither is the soul in a person. The person is in the soul. The soul is not material. How can it be contained in material? The body is material. You see, the concept of Atman was given to man so that he can be liberated from his body identification. But man and man's ego made a deep error. They started saying soul is in the body. Soul is not in the body. Body is in the soul. How can there be a soul in the body? Vedanta never says that the body has a soul. The body is just space-time and the soul is not space-time. How can not space-time be contained in space-time? So, nature and nurture are one. Two types of conditioning, physical and social. And apart from these two, beyond these two, transcending these two, is one's real nature, Swabhav, which is pure emptiness, Shunyata. Because biological conditioning is born, and this is something very, very important. Because you are born conditioned, hence education is needed. And education is needed so that you can get rid of the conditioning you were born with. And what kind of conditioning were you born with? The biological conditioning, the vritti. So the grand purpose of education is to rid you of the conditioning that you are born with. And you are born with one layer. But instead, our education ends up creating another layer. The layer of social conditioning. So we were just born conditioned, but we die doubly conditioned. In that sense, man becomes worse than animals. Because they are born conditioned and they die conditioned. If you look at a dog, he does not change through the course of his life. A dog is born a dog and dies a dog. But man changes a lot. And that change could have been a very wonderful and welcome change. Had that change been about getting rid of the layer of conditioning he was born with. But instead of that, what we have done is that the medicine is worse than the disease. Education should have obliterated mind stuff that was pre-existing. Instead, it ends up creating even more mind stuff. Yes.
Can you put some light on avidya, the deep darkness?
No, vidya is not the deep darkness. Avidya. Avidya is knowledge. Avidya, see, the word vid is to be understood. Upanishads say, ya vidya sa vimuktaye. At another place, they also say, ya vidya sa vidyate. Vidyate means that which exists. Vidyaman hona. So, vid means knowing. Knowing. And it is from vid that the word Ved also comes. Incidentally and interestingly, it is from the word vid that Vedana also comes. Vedana means suffering. When you really begin to realize, then first of all you suffer. That is why all men who do not realize anything appear so happy and contented and blissfully ignorant. But the one who starts opening up to the reality also starts opening up to suffering. Awakening, in fact, begins in suffering. So, vid means both knowing and suffering. Vidya means really, really knowing. Knowing that which is essential. Knowing that which is essential. That does not mean that one must not know about the plants, animals, words, atoms, molecules, all physics, all chemistry, outer space, that these are not to be known. But this is termed as lower knowledge by the men of wisdom. Higher knowledge is about knowing who you are and knowing that which is the most essential but non-material. I have just said, you cannot hold love in your hands. It is non-material. And there is nothing in your education that even points towards the non-material.
I just have one more point at this point. I think to some extent what you're saying is the need for education about ethics and a slightly higher values. Is that what you're saying?
No. Because all ethics are man-made. All ethics are material. Ma'am had talked about values. Values and ethics, they go together. They are all man-made. And that is why they differ from culture to culture.
But there are certain universal ethics also. I mean,
they can differ between universes.
We only acknowledge our universe. We don't have proof of other universes.
We live in multiverses. It is not a universe anymore. Even physics acknowledges that.
You are just an orphan.
Are you ambitious?
Yes, very ambitious, extremely ambitious. You know, when ambition is limited, it is of the mind. When the desire is something emanating from the mind, it is called ambition, ordinary ambition. But when the desire is related to the heart, then it is extraordinary ambition, then ambition is called devotion. I am extremely ambitious. What does it mean to be extremely ambitious? It means you want only the ultimate and you do not want any of this here and there stuff. You have set the highest target possible, the param, the transcendental. That is what it means to be extremely ambitious.
So in the way that you're, if I understand it right, the way that you're using the word ambitious now, see, even Ramakrishna Paramahansa was ambitious.
Very ambitious. Yes, please.
Sir,
Yes.
you said that knowledge walks you to the deeper side, and then understanding walks you to the much deeper side. But both of them will make you immortal. So I want to see the connection. Together. How, like, how I'm able to understand.
You see, I said that attention and faith are like two wings of a bird. Only when both the wings are together can the bird fly. Attention starts with observation. So attention starts with avidya because you are looking at an object. Wherever there are objects, there is the world. And where there is the world, there is avidya. So the world is needed. You have to look at the world. You have to be in touch with the facts. And then there is the other wing. The other wing is of faith. Both these have to go together. The intelligent man lives in touch with the facts. He knows what is happening in the world. At the same time, he does not really belong to the world. He sits alone in the heart. He is not a recluse. He is not running away to the Himalayas. He knows about the world. And he knows deeply about the world. Objectively about the world. That is the wing of attention. And then the other wing is about not belonging to the world. That is aloneness. That is faith.
So this avidya, that if we wanted to bring in elements of avidya into education, I mean, what kind of things, because as you said, first I thought you were talking about the need for an ethical approach.
No.
But you're saying it's not that.
No, not
then
that.
what is it if you're going to bring that in? Because if we, I mean, ethical approach is easy to understand, I can say, go and work.
Easy and boring.
No, we say look at Doctors Without Borders, the kind of work they are doing, or the kind of work the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is doing. This is all basically service, service of humanity, compassion. So it is all good work.
Right.
We would consider it to be good work, but you are saying that this
Vedanta does not consider that good at all. Vedanta says...
So what would that be then? Because then I am a little bit lost about what this avidya really should be. I mean, when we talk about.
So that is the first stage. That one's confidence in his concepts is a little shaken up. When I started speaking, as you are saying, we immediately make concepts. We immediately start thinking that we know what the speaker is going to talk about. Truth is not predictable at all. It proceeds, the whole thing proceeds through a rejection and refusal of what the mind is currently occupied with. But what the mind says is, I do not want to get rid of what I already have. Tell me, what more can you give to me? I have X and I have come to this room, so give me Y. I'll be enriched, I'll have X plus Y. But the entire method is to not to have Y on top of X, but to get rid of X itself. And after that, there is a clean emptiness. That is what this whole thing is about. Getting rid of oneself. Getting rid of X, not adding Y to X. Hence, it is a little scary in the beginning, because one is shown the fallacy of his life. One is shown the shortcomings of the way one lives, operates, his value systems, his belief systems, his whole way of decision making. So in the beginning one does not quite like it. But as one moves deeper, there is a charm here, there is a love affair here.
So I actually now what I'm looking for is basically the sense I got is that obviously that which I also agree that just that vidya is just that knowledge part, which is obviously not it's inert. Okay, it may be voluminous, but it is inert. So we need to put there has to be an element of the soul in it. But here, what I'm saying is that the last part which you said is that we are not going to give anything extra. We are going to just remove the X part of it. So we are going to create the emptiness. Just get them comfortable with the emptiness. So that also, to some extent, I understand.
No, not really. It is not about getting them comfortable with emptiness. You see, when you say that I am comfortable with a black kurta and a white kurta, then whether you wear black or white, you are essentially the same, right? In the case of the mind, the story is totally different. The mind is what its contents are. The mind is what it wears. So the moment, now you have a mind that contains X. And if X starts going away, starts dropping, then it is not that your mind is changing. The fact is you are getting a rebirth. It is not like changing shirts where you are the same and just the shirt is changing. The mind is its contents. Remember, the mind does not contain things. Understand the difference between these two statements. The mind does not contain stuff.
So when there is no content, there is no mind.
There is no mind. Wonderful. Very well said. Beautiful. So it is not that I will become comfortable with emptiness, because I am not the same anymore. So there is no question of becoming comfortable with emptiness. Had I remained the same, there would have been a need to become comfortable with something new. As the mind has dropped its baggage.
So there is no I also.
Very wonderful. Very yes. The I has changed. I am not the same anymore. That's why I use the word rebirth. Rebirth.
So the challenge is basically, as a teacher for me, what exactly do I tell my students? Because for the students, I can see that this will be very uncomfortable, because they are holding on to many things as crutches, and then you're telling them to let go of all the crutches.
No, not really. Because if you are telling them to let go of something, it becomes an X plus Y kind of situation. I have my concepts, and now I have another concept which says, let go, be yourself, live life king size. I had so many concepts, and now I have n plus 1 concepts. What is the n plus 1th concept? Drop all the concepts. So the n concepts are C1, C2, C3, C4, and the n plus 1th concept is
minus of
drop all the concepts, and that itself is a concept. So it is not about telling something new to the student. It is about creating conditions, inviting them skillfully. And we are teachers, we know that skill. It is about inviting them skillfully to look at the world around. It is a little difficult initially to look at your own mind. But it is easier to look at the world around because the eyes are configured to look outwards. The ears are configured to hear voices from outside. So the first step is, can you boldly and fearlessly see what's going on? Can you see what is happening in your family without bias? Can you see what is happening in your workplace? Can you see what you are doing to your neighbor right now? Very difficult. Can you see what is just happening at the level of the senses, at the level of the fact? We are not even talking of the truth.
If you are meditating regularly, yes, we can go to that reflection.
What happens is, ma'am, what we call as meditation is just a method, a process. There is actually nothing called meditation. You'll be surprised by it. There is actually nothing called meditation in Vedanta. Vedanta only has meditativeness. A meditativeness that continues 24 hours. Vedanta does not talk of the morning-evening meditation at all.
If you are in a self-reflective mood throughout, then it is possible to know what you are doing to your neighbor.
Well
to your
said,
colleague.
well said, well said. Very well said. Throughout. The key thing is throughout.
24/7.
24/7. Well said.
Yes, actually, this is my thing. Rishi Aurobindo said that all life is yoga.
Wonderful.
That is
Yes. We are coming there, yes.
However, the speed of life is too much for the teachers and students.
Life has no speed. Only mind has speed. Life, you see,
Life is very structured.
we are all sitting here. For some of us, life right now is absolutely still. For some of us, life is whirling around at 500 kilometers an hour. Life is neither still nor moving. It is the mind that keeps moving. If mind is still, life is still. Life is still even in the middle of all the movement. That is the great art of living and teaching. Let there be great movement on the outside, which is avidya, and let there be perfect stillness on the inside, which is vidya.
This is what both is.
Both is the sublimation of knowledge. So knowledge has gone away, questions have gone away, answers too have gone away. There is nothing. There is just nothing except innocence.
Sometimes the body is here, the mind is elsewhere. Another thought is, does Atma or the soul can leave the mind during dream and go elsewhere to travel around and come back? Or is it the mind which goes around and comes back?
Yes. Whatsoever is, which is that whatsoever appears to be, whatsoever appears to be moving is mind. Whatever appears, whatever can be thought of is mind. The Atman cannot be thought of. So there is no question of the Atman entering the body or leaving the body or going around here and there. All of these are just superstitions.
The body comes to an end with the departure of one. Is that Atma or the mind?
Nothing. When what you call as the ending of the body is just a movement in Prakriti. Just as clouds come and clouds go. It's because we are deeply identified with the body So we start calling event of going as a great death. Otherwise things are happening, right? If you look at it, every happening is birth and death. It begins and ends, right? Happening means it is beginning and ending. Similarly, this configuration of material called the body begins and ends. There is nothing in it related to the Atman.
Is the moment so-called life and death, is the mind and the soul? Body is inert, body will be just as shape. What is moving around? Is the mind and the soul together or one?
The mind moves around, but the center of the mind, and the center never moves. It's like a monkey that is tethered to some anchor. The monkey is hopping here and there, but the center never moves. It's a bad analogy because even the center will then be in time and space. But just to explain, I am using it.
So which one is immortal, mind or soul?
Both are immortal.
So with death, what moves? Mind
You see,
moves, or soul moves, or both moves?
very amusingly, Vedanta says that there are two that are anadi, Brahm and Maya. Maya is the very daughter of truth. And by Maya I refer to the mind. Till the time there is the truth, there would also be the outpourings of truth. Mind will also be there. Krishna is so fond of saying again and again in the Bhagavad Gita, Mam Maya, Mam Maya. How can it be mortal then? If Krishna is immortal, then how can his Maya be mortal? It will continue. People will come and go. Men will die. Systems will change. The types of Maya will change. But Maya continues. Mind continues.
So when you're talking about the soul, are you visualizing the soul as something
No,
that is...
not at all. I am not at all visualizing the soul. In fact, it is under great compulsion that one has to give a word.
to it. So it is, so then, okay, fine. So if we are actually, because I was just wondering about whether it is to be conceived of as being...
Don't conceive.
But I am male, so I can't conceive. So no, what I'm saying is that the one question I had
Know
was...
the possibilities of science.
Whether one should think of it as something that can be identified with an individual, like Dr. Sarabji's soul is different from Alvika's soul, or is it a sort of a homogeneous entity that resides in the ether, which is cannot be identified with anybody?
Thinking of it is not possible. But one feels a great temptation to think about it. Because one wants to contain everything in thought. Only then one feels comfortable. If it cannot be contained in thought, then you start feeling uneasy. The ego feels bad. What is it that I cannot even think of? I must think of it.
A lot is being talked about spirituality and science,
Yes.
spirituality, technology. It is a very good idea that in our education system, we bring a small unit to component spirituality and we start discussing. Nobody can teach proper spirituality,
Yes.
but we start discussing. It will be good.
In fact, you see, an educational institution is by definition a spiritual institution. It is just that because of concepts and notions, the very idea of spirituality has become abused and distorted. We are sitting in a spiritual setting right now. What does spirituality mean? What does the word spirit mean? What does the word spirit mean?
That which does not have a body.
No, that which is essential, the real truth. Truth. Now, obviously, we do not teach falseness in our classrooms. So, this university is anyway a spiritual place. It is just that science is a very small subset of spirituality. And somehow we don't go beyond science. You see, what is science? Science says, here am I, and here is the world, and I want to know about the world. So science limits itself to the study of objects. There are these objects and I'll study them. Spirituality says, wonderful, do study the objects. It is a part of avidya and it is very important. Only by studying the objects will you learn the facts, and facts are important. But one cannot remain limited to objects. One has to turn to the subject also. So spirituality is science plus subject. What science does not cover is the looker. Science will say, I am looking at the pendulum, but science will never ask, how are you looking? Are you greedy, jealous, ambitious? How are you? Science does not look at you. Spirituality looks at the pendulum and also at the observer of the pendulum. That is the only difference between science and spirituality. Not really a difference, because science is contained in spirituality. There can be no science sans spirituality.
What is the process of looking inside?
Looking inside is not looking at any particular place. Wherever you look at using your eyes and using your mind will be outside. What is the definition of outside? Outside is defined as that which is perceptible through the senses and processable through the mind. That is outside. That which is perceptible through the senses and processable through the mind is called outside. So what is inside then? Nothing. Silence. Inside does not mean that you have to close your eyes and think of something in the brain and such stuff. All that is chickenry.
But then what is the process of doing it?
What is the process of looking outside? First, that has to be understood. Stop that process and that is sufficient. All the time we are only going outside and outside.
How do you stop this process for 11 years?
How does it happen? By understanding how does it happen. How are we always taken away from ourselves? We are taken away from ourselves when we tell our kids, compare your marks to somebody else. Now he is being taken away from himself. We are taken away from ourselves when the glitzy mall tempts us. So we are being taken away from ourselves. We are taken away from ourselves when we watch TV or movies and they create a scene in which we get totally lost in the scene and forget all sense of who we are. So there are 1,000 ways in which we are being taken away from ourselves. When you can realize on the spot that here you are being taken away from yourself, then the process of going outwards stops, and that stoppage is called going inwards. Otherwise, going inwards means nothing. It is nothing special.
Consciousness is the main thing. Consciousness.
Consciousness is always operational. Spirituality is the cessation of consciousness. This is another superstition. To be conscious of something is to live in duality. I am conscious of this glass, this container, this tumbler. So there is me and there is this. Consciousness always implies duality. Consciousness is a very relevant word in science. Sooner than later you will find that science is looking at consciousness also. It is in fact already looking. If you look at some of the most recent research, now it is impossible to proceed any further in physics without coming to consciousness. So science is looking at consciousness. Spirituality goes beyond consciousness.
So how do you stop this 11-year boy from going towards this exposure outside the exposure?
By just catching yourself on the spot. You see, nothing happens without one's consent.
But the child refuses to do your way.
Yes, the child will refuse. That is why there is an age after which this stopping can happen. You cannot teach these things to a 6-year-old. It is only when he starts entering teenage that he can be given the basics of this education.
So that's what how they give these basics to that book.
He is doing something. Can I just ask him, now, just as you remember 1,000 other things, also remember to watch yourself.
That's what how they do that. How does he
You can devise basic processes. At Advait, we have a reflections diary. At Advait, we have turned WhatsApp into a tool of remembrance. But that depends on particular situation. One can devise a lot of methods, simple methods.
There's a common problem.
No, it's not at all a common problem. It's a common problem when you forget to devise methods. You see, even the remembrance that I must have methods comes from being free of the outside. So somewhere it has to start. It starts firstly, if you are asking what is the very first center, it starts by coming in contact with someone who can keep reminding you. If the reminding authority, entity himself is prone to forgetting, then obviously there is no question of remembering.
So that authority must be trained first.
That authority is beyond you. What that authority must be and where he comes from, that you cannot guess. The only thing you can see is whether that authority remembers. And if that authority remembers, that's it. That's sufficient. You can only request him, you remember, so keep reminding us. That is the second wing of the bird, faith. Having faith in that authority. You remember, kindly keep reminding me. I want to get up at 6 and I know that you get up at 5. Kindly wake me up. Because my own alarm clock fails. And if it does not fail, what do? I shut it down and go back to sleep again. But you are a living entity. You cannot be shut down. So I request you, wake me up even if you have to slap me. Even if you have to pour water over me, put water over me, but wake me up, remind me.
Then first faith comes. If I have to depend on the faith, then only I can go inward, because then that power or whatever is that entity comes. But if faith comes, then everything is being done. Our question is, faith कैसे आता है?
ये मत पूछिए faith कैसे आता है. ये देखिए, सुनिए, क्योंकि जरूरी है ही नहीं कि वो कहीं से आता हो. आप अज्यूम कर रहे हैं कि जो कुछ है कहीं से आता है. मन में जो कुछ है वो कहीं से आता है. हृदय में जो कुछ है वो कहीं से आता नहीं है, वो होता है. फेथ कहीं से नहीं आती है, फेथलेसनेस कहीं से आती है. खेल सारा इस बात का है कि आप देखें कि श्रद्धाहीनता कहां से आती है, उसके दरवाजे बंद करें. श्रद्धा कहीं से नहीं आएगी, वो नैसर्गिक होती है, वो स्वभाव है, वो कहीं से नहीं आती, वो होती है. श्रद्धाहीनता हमें सिखाई जाती है. हमसे कहा जाता है शक करना सीखो, इस पर शक करो, उस पर शक करो, जांचो, परखो. ये हमें सिखाया जाता है. इसके दरवाजे बंद कर दीजिए, श्रद्धा तो है ही, वो अपने आप है. और अगर इसके दरवाजे बंद नहीं कर सकते हैं तो कम से कम जितना इकट्ठा हो गया है उस कचरे को बाहर निकालने के उपाय करिए, कोशिश करिए. इस बात को भी जांचिए कि मैंने अपने भीतर जितना डर, संशय, संदेह एकत्रित कर रखा है उसकी कोई जरूरत है भी या नहीं है. जांचिए तो उस बात को. हम सब धारणाओं में जीते हैं बिना ये जांचे कि मैं जितना डरता हूं और जितने मैंने कवच पहन रखे हैं और सुरक्षा के जितने आयोजन कर रखे हैं, उन सब की कोई आवश्यकता है भी कि नहीं. श्रद्धाहीनता यही तो है ना, अपनी सुरक्षा का इंतजाम, डरे रहो. हम ये जांचते भी तो नहीं है.
We have been talking about the mind a lot, but when we talk of biology, we just say there is a brain. How do I justify the existence of the mind?
Why must one justify? It is there.
I mean, if I have to explain to somebody that there is the existence of the mind, how do I say it?
You will say that which is hearing right now is mind.
What about the brain then?
The brain is the physical apparatus in which a lot of physical activity is happening.
I fail to hear the truth.
You could then simply say that all the physical and material things are happening in the brain. As I am speaking to you, this process has a strong material component in the sense that waves are emanating from this point in space and falling on your eardrums, and waves are falling on these cameras as well. Your brain is analogous to these mechanical systems. It is recording what I am saying, but you can also understand what I am saying. These camera systems will never understand what I am saying. In that sense, the mind is different from the brain. The brain is like the camera. The mind is brain plus understanding. It goes beyond the brain.
But then we say the brain understands.
The brain will never understand.
How will it?
The brain can only have memory. The brain can only process information as per its programming. Understanding is something of the beyond. No supercomputer can ever understand what I am saying right now.
So that is exactly what is my dilemma. Where is the seed of understanding?
That cannot be thought of. One must not even try that.
Do you think it's a convenient answer?
It is a very convenient answer. Very, very convenient answer. Why must you look for inconvenience?
So what
No,
is
but
your
you-
experience?
no, but you saying awakening happens only if there is suffering. So inconvenience is the process for awakening. So if you're looking for a convenient answer,
You see, you being what you are, you will try again and again to think of the Atman, and you will fail. So you will suffer anyway. Because the truth will not enter your little mind. It is so vast and immense and infinite. It cannot be contained in our little vessels.
so why bother about it?
Because you are bothering about it. It is not a question of why. Because you are all the time restless about it. What else is your restlessness for? You are all the time searching for something, right? You are all the time hunting for something, and you do not even know what all this restlessness is for. So it is not a question of why bother about it. You are already bothering so much about it.
But then you cannot ignore it.
Yes, you cannot ignore it.
Existence is
so
something
many
to question
years
mark.
You
Can reduce it.
No, you cannot reduce it.
I have a question for you, looking at your profile. So, you've been communicating to so many people, different communities. What are people seeking usually when
Peace.
they come to you?
Peace. It is not a question of what do people coming to me seek.
In the sessions?
In the sessions or outside the sessions. Nobody has ever sought anything except that one. You may think that you want a particular shirt. You may think that you want to buy a house. You may think that you want physical intimacy with a man or a woman. You may think that you want money or prestige. But the fact of the matter is, anybody who has ever wanted has only wanted one thing, which is not a thing.
Just
And without getting that thing, the restlessness never goes away. And that is why we all die restless. Even on the last day, nobody is peaceful.
How do you define peace in daily life?
Daily life, non-daily life, peace is just the absence of disturbance. Peace is nothing, it is not a thing. So it is just the absence of what is continuously happening. This chit-chat, this murmur, this whispering, this noise. When this is not there, that is peace.